Did you know that most people don't see NGOs as credible sources of information? Yes, you heard it right. Organizations and academic experts, peers like yourself, and even regular employees are all more credible than the organization itself. If you wonder where they build this trust, our bet is on social media. Digitalization has led to the decentralization of communications. Access to powerful channels is no longer limited to public relations departments and traditional media. So I'm pleased to welcome Nathalie Laidler-Kylander, a managing director at the Draper Richards Kaplan Foundation, Stefan Stolle, a director of marketing and communications at Helvetas, and Zenebe Uraguchi, a program manager of RECONOMY and a practitioner of knowledge management, learning, and communications. In your book, Nathalie, you mentioned two major trends that are of particular relevance to nonprofit organizations today. What are those trends?
So the first trend really is around social media and networking. And it's really this shift away from being able to control messaging, particularly with the advent of social media and social networks. People are sharing information, forming perceptions, really based on multiple sources of information. And so, you know, as a brand or as a manager of a brand, you really can't expect anymore to be able to control the messaging. You have to think of opportunities to increase engagement with your audiences while accepting a little bit of loss of control and creating brand ambassadors that will actually carry your message and embody your message. So that's the first sort of big trend. The second one in the nonprofit sector is the increase of partnerships and collaboration. What's been interesting over the last decade or so is that there's been a blurring of the boundaries between for-profits and nonprofits. You know, for-profits used to be only focused on generating profitability and revenues, and nonprofits really were completely mission-focused. And those two dimensions have blurred a little bit. So nonprofits are increasingly looking for ways to have earned income, whereas for-profits, to appeal to their audiences and their customers, are trying to engage in some mission-related work and or to create a perception with their brands that is connected to a mission, to a social mission. The other dimension to this is that nonprofits are tackling really large, complex problems, and they can't solve them alone. So there's a growing realization that in order to implement your mission, to reach the goals that you have set yourself as a nonprofit organization, you have to work with others. And that increasingly includes people from the public sector, governmental sector, and the for-profit sector. And so you get sort of this tri-sector energy, if you will, and need to collaborate across sectors in order to accomplish your social goals. And so those are two of the trends that I think we saw when we started writing the book, but I think are still valid today.
You also offer a new framework for nonprofit brand management, presenting the brand idea, which stands for brand integrity, brand democracy, and brand affinity. Could you elaborate what does each mean?
I mean, I think the reason why I started doing this work is that there were no good models for brand management in the for-profit sector. The ultimate goal in the for-profit sector as an entity, as a company, is to increase your market share by being better than competitors. And so a lot of the work of the brand is positioning yourself, your products, your services as better than the competition in order to increase market share and all the benefits that come with that. In the nonprofit sector, the objective is different. You're trying to solve a social problem that cannot be solved alone. And so it's fundamentally a different objective and a different role that the brand plays. So the brand in the nonprofit space can still define you and your role and position you, but it also serves to attract the partners that you need in order to accomplish your goal. And so that idea, that fundamental difference, took us on a journey to really try to understand how organizations, nonprofit organizations, build their brand effectively. And I want to stress that brand is not a communication tool. It's really a strategic asset that helps you to do the work that you are made to do. That is what you are trying to accomplish. So when we think about those factors, there's 3 dimensions to the nonprofit brand model. The first is brand integrity. And what that really means is the structural alignment between your values, your mission, and your communications. So what you're really trying to do is create integrity throughout the organization around those 3 components. The brand is in effect both the vehicle and the embodiment of your mission as a nonprofit organization. And so making sure that that mission, the perception of the mission, the brand identity, if you will, is really closely aligned to your core mission and your core values. That's the notion of brand integrity. The second idea is this idea of brand democracy, and that is tied to the first trend that we talked about, which is this sort of loss of control of messaging. If you try to control everything that anybody says about your brand, you're going to be wasting a lot of time. What you can do is create more of a participative process that enables other stakeholders to really take on the brand as something that's really important to them. And this is the link to creating brand ambassadors. And so those brand ambassadors could be your employees. They could be other people in other organizations working in your field. And they could also be your beneficiaries. They take on this role of brand ambassador. So being open and being sort of participative, in this notion of democratizing the brand, if you will, can really help you achieve your mission. The third and final component of our framework is called brand affinity. And this is the idea that you use your brand not necessarily to grow your income or only for the purposes of your own organization, but in service to the broader mission. So what you're trying to do with your brand is create momentum for the entire problem that you're trying to solve. And that requires you to work with other organizations. So in essence, rather than trying to compete against others and use your brand to say, we are the best and we're going to get more market share, you can use your brand to elevate everybody that's working in this field and try to create some cohesion so that you're collectively addressing the problem. And that is going to get you to greater mission implementation as well, because you're getting these allies and these brand partners that really help you drive your work.
According to Nathalie, 2 major trends are of particular relevance to nonprofit organizations today. Changes in communications technology and the increase in partnerships and collaborative action. Why should an employee share what they know, Stefan? Why should that employee aim to be attractive?
Right, Sabine. The 2 trends that you just mentioned, the social media and networking. This is a real shift today from like one-way communication to two-way conversation. This allows really true dialogue between us in our projects, in the NGOs, the organization that we work for, with our partners. So dialogue usually always leads to an increased engagement. So that is why social media and networking have really become so important. So by using like our own personal social media profiles, such as LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook or whatever you are using, you start actually engaging with potential partners, with professionals, with funders, and you do that by sharing knowledge and authentic content, and it's how you actually start acting as a brand ambassador, as an ambassador for the organization you work for. The other trend that you mentioned that we see and in fact need more partnership and collaboration, that's basically based on the fact that we all realize that if we want to change the world, if we want to achieve our mission, we cannot do that alone. We need others. We need to partner across different sectors. We need to work together with private and public sectors, and also funders have realized that multi-stakeholder approaches are a success factor for the work that we do. So therefore, we want to be attractive for others, for partners, for PROSEC. And how to become attractive? Exactly by sharing your knowledge, by actively engaging with others in a dialogue.
What is a brand ambassador and how to become an empowered brand ambassador?
What is a brand ambassador? A brand ambassador is someone, I mean, first of all, you really have to adopt the values and principles of the organization you work for. That's really important. You need to know who you work for, what's the mission of the organization, and embrace that. You actively represent these values and goals internally within the organization, but then you start doing that externally. You start as a brand ambassador reaching out to potential partners and stakeholders through your own social media channels. You invite others to contribute, to participate and engage in a dialogue, usually also through social media. And you share your knowledge, you make your lessons learned available to others, whether they are positive or negative. So to be authentic, you also share your failures, very important. And because you learn from failures. And yeah, as a brand ambassador, you create your own network, you use your own network for the good of your mission, for the good of the mission of your project or your organization. And finally, you use your personal channels. That's really important. Too many people in organizations still think that they are only allowed to communicate through like the official channels of the organization, on the website of the organization or on an official blog and that you publish in the organization. Use your own channels, build your own network through social media.
Could you tell us, Zenebe, what is knowledge management, learning, and communication culture?
By knowledge management, learning, and communication culture, my understanding is that it's all about stimulating and strengthening the practice of synthesizing, refining, and communicating knowledge and learning. In that sense, it's more than writing or documenting what we feel, what we are doing, or what we have learned in our day-to-day work. It's rather about understanding and then accepting knowledge management and learning and communication as part and parcel of what we do, and not an add-on or an extra nice to have thing. Some people in the past also asked me what the culture of knowledge management, learning, and communication is and is not. Indeed, we should recognize that not everything, not every knowledge and learning can easily be quantified. It's far more complex because it's derived out of human relationships and experiences. We can generate, describe, realize, transform, and reuse it. But to be able to do this, there needs to be a shared understanding among people in an organization or in a project or program about the strong relationships between knowledge, learning, and communication on the one hand, and the quality of results that an organization, a project, or a program seeks to achieve on the other hand. I hope you agree with me, also people who are listening to this, that in the age of rapid information technology and communication, or digitalization, the culture of knowledge management, learning, and communication derives an organization's kind of sustainable and competitive advantage. That means that knowledge and learning quickly becomes out of date if it is not upgraded, if it's not improved, or if it's not reinvented, if you like. Just as a reference to explain also to your question about the culture, you may have read this before. 3 decades ago, Peter Senge, a professor from MIT, wrote a book titled The Fifth Discipline. So what he did was, using systems thinking, he nicely explained how organizations can become a learning organization through fostering and developing reflective conversation and understanding complexity. Why I am mentioning the work of Peter is because it provides us good insights into understanding and applying the culture of knowledge management, learning, and communication, which exists when there is a conscious and consistent process and enabling environment for fostering a dynamic and evolving culture. So these are the basic elements and characteristics that I would use to explain and define the culture of knowledge management, learning, and communication.
How can we develop this culture?
From experience, I can share a couple of points about practical ways and processes of stimulating, building, and strengthening the culture of knowledge management, learning, and communication. The first critical point is the fact that leaders are important. How many times have we all heard the importance of having leaders who are key or important for transforming their teams and making their programs or organizations learning? Indeed, the belief that only top management can cause significant change in knowledge management, learning, and communication culture is wrong, and then sometimes it's also disempowering. True, leaders are critical for creating an environment necessary for fostering knowledge and learning. Without the proactive role of a leader, it's also true that it's difficult, if not impossible, to realize collaborative working and collective learning. I also recognize that with all the demands on already scarce resources, there is a need to prioritize in terms of having the roles of leaders. Yet it is wrong and flawed to see knowledge and learning as a second priority to others. In other words, leaders who don't see knowledge management, learning, and communication as an investment, but as a cost, will contribute, to killing innovation, and then they nip in the bud any motivation that a team may have towards, building that culture. I can assure you these from my experience of working for different organizations before coming to Helvetas. So that's the first point. The second factor that I would like to mention is in a team or an organization, ambassadors, or I can call them champions, are very critical for inspiring and driving the culture of knowledge management, learning and communication forward. In practice, I saw also many knowledge management learning initiatives in organizations and then projects. They have started strong, but they lost, momentum and effectiveness over time. If you ask why, because sometimes they overemphasized the forest and paid little attention to the trees. So knowledge and learning is realized and it becomes effective when there are shared roles and responsibilities. This may create, everybody's job is nobody's job. Additionally, while defined processes and structures are critical, they can also get knowledge and learning stuck in a mechanistic approach. So this is where I think cultivating ambassadors or champions becomes more important. By ambassadors or champions, I should also say that I mean people who are good at synthesizing and communicating knowledge and learning. They embrace, their own experience as a learner, but they also proactively share them with others. So these ambassadors and champions also may emerge organically as natural knowledge management and learning communication champions, or they can acquire the skills over time with clear investment, or see also the opportunities as part of their growth. So there is a lot of evidence that being active in knowledge management, learning and communicating is linked to building recognition and finding success in one's profession. So ambassadors or champions also recognize that. So this is the second important pillar, if you like, or element for building the culture. And then the third and last point that I would like to emphasize as an important ingredient to a successful culture of knowledge management, learning and communication is the need for organizations to invest in knowledge management, learning and communication. Learning communication is much more than simply transferring something to someone who doesn't know. Investment in skills development or in better and improved way of building conducive environment for the team or for the organization or for its members is critical in terms of fostering and building the culture of knowledge management, learning and communication. So such kind of investment can also be infrastructure to use information technology in a better way. So to summarize, leaders are important, ambassadors or champions inspire and drive, and investment in skills and other enabling factors solidify the culture of knowledge management, learning and communication. These 3 points are very, very important as ingredients, as important elements of building the culture. But without these points that I have mentioned, if we have a strategy for building the culture for knowledge management, learning and communication, then culture will eat the strategy for breakfast. So I think we need to translate the strategy by bringing these kind of concrete elements, concrete ingredients to building the culture.
What's your message, Stefan, for the development professionals out there on becoming brand ambassadors?
You will multiply through your own social media network the message of your organization, and often you might reach out to more people than the organization actually can. And the good thing about all this is that you are also, as a brand ambassador for yourself. You strengthen your position in the organization and in the context, and you strengthen your position on the labor market.
So, are you a brand ambassador? Even if the title is not on your resume, you may be. But if you work for a nonprofit, you definitely should be. We have interesting topics coming up, so stay tuned and hit the subscribe button. This was Sabine, a communication manager at RECONOMY, a program of the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency implemented by Helvetas in 12 countries in Eastern Europe, South Caucasus, and the Western Balkans. Thank you for tuning in and see you soon.